Why have the most dangerous people in history hardly ever looked like villains? What do unyielding leaders do? The answer is the same for both silent strategists and masters of manipulation. Resides in a concept that is both deadly and counterintuitive. Genuine power does not shout. It communicates in whispers, it conceals itself, and it is exactly in the legendary Chinese character Sun Tzu possesses this invisibility and invincibility. More than 2 millennia ago, a strategist stated that the ultimate skill of warfare is subduing the adversary without engaging in combat. But what does this actually entail in real life? Implies that hiding strength to make one appear weak and uncertain is the safest way to win. Innocuous while secretly planning a destructive assault, this one of the most misinterpreted ideas in the classic is the art of war. Concepts in strategic thinking, since it takes more than just tactical knowledge. But in the contemporary society, an almost inhuman control over one's own ego, everyone tries to look stronger, more capable, and more confident, who are adept at making themselves invisible and so unreachable, while idiots show off, the intelligent learn, and the insecure. Battleground can be a boardroom, therefore shout to be heard while the mighty listen in silence. Family meal or a dispute, and in each of these situations, those who this video thoroughly examines how the strategic appearance of weakness frequently results in victory prior to the initial clash. One of the most powerful tools in the psychological toolbox is the appearance of vulnerability. We will comprehend why from the viewpoints of behavioral psychology, Eastern philosophy, and neuroscience. The benefit of underestimating yourself is that when someone thinks you're weak, they down their defenses and immediately disclose all of their anxieties. Vulnerabilities. This video is about control and turning others around, not about surrender. Views into a skillfully constructed trap, and at the conclusion of this adventure, you will not only recognize the effectiveness of disguise, but also learn how to apply it in your emotional, professional, and personal life. Since truth is harsh and uncomplicated, nobody defends themselves against an attack that they did not anticipate, which is precisely why the most dangerous ones. Most people assume that power must be held by those who don't appear to be evident. That in order to be effective, strength must be displayed and applied, even dreaded. Yet this viewpoint is naive and rudimentary. The product of an animal, human behavior is still dominated by an animalistic drive. Sun Tzu overrealized a far more complex truth power 2,000 years ago that shows it is destined to be neutralized too quickly. True power is what is not. When observed, it functions covertly, poses as weakness, and turns the strategic invisibility principle, which turns its very invisibility into a weapon, suggested by Sun Tzu, as a mental paradigm and a means of achieving. Even when it appears that you are at a disadvantage, go through the world with total advantage. It begins with the belief that all people engage their defenses when they perceive a threat, mechanisms that cause the body to stiffen and the mind to close. Yet in the other disarms when the seemingly innocuous barriers fall apart. Without being aware of it, and the danger is right here. Imagine fighting on a battlefield while your adversaries are exposing themselves and are unaware that you are a soldier. You move freely and watch as your instructions vie for control and space. You listen, you learn valuable knowledge, and you attack precisely when the time is appropriate. Not by force, but by superiority of time and space. And this intelligence is truly invincible, not in the sense that it can withstand an attack, but rather that is never targeted since. In the words of today, strategic invisibility was never seen as a genuine threat. Utilized in a variety of settings at work where you don't directly compete with, you allow egotists to entangle themselves while you subtly strengthen your position. When in a relationship, you don't share your innermost feelings with those who don't yet understand you. Deserve them, therefore you watch, test, and read the other one while staying impartial in negotiations. You portray yourself as adaptable, open, and even insecure. Consequently, give the other person a fictitious sensation of control. When you eventually disclose your position, they have previously fulfilled all requirements, and their flaws are limited. Sun Tzu said, "When near, make it seem you are far, when far seem to be near." The ego of the other player is your primary weapon in this game of illusion. The other person's need to dominate in order to win and be better. Presenting yourself as defeated allows you to manipulate all of this, because the most successful trap and the simplest triumph are those in which the adversary is unaware that they are at war, is the one in which the victim believes they are in charge. Self-control is necessary for this principle to work. Forces you to give up the urge to prove anything right now in order to get the approval you need. Emotional intelligence to resist. The need to respond, but in exchange, you acquire a kind of power that acts from within and cannot be defeated because it cannot be found. The enemy distorting their view, perplexing their intuition, and taking advantage of they themselves open any gap, assuming you're weak. Yet this tactic doesn't work without having a thorough understanding of how the human mind works. What causes someone to undervalue another? What mental processes result in why would a human being lower their defenses when confronted with something that appears vulnerable? Because it appears innocuous, you can manipulate an interaction's entire dynamic without ever raising your voice. In the following section, we shall explore these secret mechanisms and uncover them. How underestimating oneself can be a formidable weapon due to psychology. The game really starts when people start to feel insecure because they don't think you're a threat. Please click the subscribe button to join the channel if this content makes sense to you. We appreciate your support. Assistance. The human mind is extremely susceptible to illusions. We are taught from an early age to equate presence with strength and loudness of voice with power. The link between domineering behavior and authority is so instinctive that we hardly challenge it, which is precisely why underestimating becomes one of the most powerful instruments of strategic manipulation. When someone thinks you're weak, insignificant, or limited, they not only lower their defenses and show who they really are, and it's at this point that underestimating the game changes is a misinterpretation, although the error does not occur by accident. Instead, it is produced and built, which calls for a cold. When someone exhibits patience and a highly analytical intelligence, the other person puts all of their preconceptions onto them, making them appear weak, timid, and reluctant. I can unwind because they don't represent a threat, yet what's really happening is, on the contrary, the individual who appears feeble is taking in information mapping, actions that push boundaries, and this happens because the other person, in their unconscious conceit, that they were in charge is revealed. By underestimating blind spots, people who think they are in control of the situation avoid defending themselves. They begin talking too much, showing too much, and sharing too much. And in this unintentional exposure, they also disclose their hidden anxieties, insecurities, and intentions. As the human brain enters cognitive mode when it senses no danger, economy mode, the filters are loosened, and in this reckless state it becomes extremely manipulable. This occurs in corporate social life at all levels, settings where the discreet worker never interrupts and pays closer attention than when the egotists advertise themselves. Speaking is viewed as passive, builds up silent wisdom, and when the time is right, a restructure promotion of a crisis, he takes precise action that surprises everyone, not due to his weakness, but rather because everyone thought he was in relationships. The same process is repeated by the individual who shows up, weak, who avoids direct contact frequently, and appears naive, makes the other person feel better. And this superiority complex is ironic. The onset of vulnerability, because we lose caution when we think we are smarter than someone else. The antithesis of failure is blind trust, which is produced by arrogance. Is the ideal environment for highly skilled psychological manipulation, which the unseen manipulator does not face, but instead causes through his seeming frailty. He instills ideas in the other person by using silence as a strategy of using hesitancy as a diversion, a planned error as a trap, and all of the reason this works is that the human ego craves approval, and nothing feeds the ego more than being in front of a subordinate, which is precisely why so many strategists, and historically, diplomacy, has feigned weakness rather than fear. However, they choose to understand that control is not about imposing. Rather, it is about revealing that the real manipulator pulls, pushes, and commands, implies, and, more importantly, keeps his identity a secret until it's too late for the other to respond. But mastering the art of being undervalued is difficult. It entails suppressing one's own ego and avoiding the need to justify one's value, and turning each motion into a means of reading the other one that needs to be done, realizing that all human interactions are a ballet of perception, and that people who are skilled at it, the game, now that we know how underestimating has a secret power and how it directly influences other people's conduct, it's time to go farther. How precisely do we implement these concepts in our day-to-day lives? How can we transform these tactics into tangible acts that give us a competitive edge without being revealed? The instruments of quiet emotional manipulation hold the key to the solution, and that's what we'll talk about next. Prepare to discover the most subtle among the most deadly tools in the psychological toolbox. Understanding that undervaluation is a potent weapon is only the first step. Applying this idea skillfully in a real-world situation is where true expertise resides. In a daily and completely undetectable way, this application needs a psychological sophistication that few people are skilled at, projecting vulnerability while not acting in such a passive manner, while controlling and giving way to later. When the entire region is conquered, manipulation changes into deliberate strategy, and the architect is shown to be the one who appears weak. Emotional concealment is the first basic strategy of the surrounding environment. The current world is an emotional trigger minefield. When someone attacks, they anticipate a response. When someone belittles you, they want to see how angry you are. Most individuals react with rage and hatred, just as the aggressor anticipates when they try to take advantage of your weakness or object, but the real strategist behaves differently, turning every act of hostility into a situation where they stay quiet while others erupt. They smile when that smile is unsettling, since it makes people anticipate their demise. Signal dominance rather than surrender. Picture your boss making fun of you. When you're in public, your first instinct would be to protect yourself or take revenge. Keep quiet out of animosity. Yet the trained mind recognizes that this was an exposure of insecurity, a lack of control, and a chilly reaction with simply saying, "I understand your position," disarms the attack and uses force the other to face their own hyperbole by not responding as anticipated. You turn into mysterious, and for those who must exert control over others, nothing is more terrifying than not being able to forecast their answers. The second tactic is to employ gentle language. Words are tools, but the most lethal is not a strong term. Rather, it is a nuanced one, like maybe, could be, or I'm not sure. Create the appearance of weakness. If I'm correct, and you might be right. They cause the other person to let down their defenses, thinking they are dealing with a weak, unsure, or even obedient person. But the purpose of this gentleness is to avoid confrontation and create room for the they. Talk more and defend themselves more in order to expose themselves. They never reveal their own contradictions, anxieties, or insecurities. In this situation, being gentle is a trap rather than a sign of surrender. Next, we have the low-key approach. In a society where everyone wants to be noticed, those who watch become rulers by avoiding the spotlight. Spotlight, not out of fear, but rather as a strategic decision, provides an edge that few understand, that the peripheral glance notices things that the primary gaze overlooks. A discreet strategist observes confrontations, listens in on talks that are not intended for them, and wanders behind the scenes. Avoid taking part and use all of the information as future money. Everyone is taken by surprise when they act, because nobody anticipated ranging from a person who never wanted to attract notice to the most sophisticated strategies. False vulnerability is the skill of exposing well-selected flaws, posing as though you don't comprehend something simple by purposefully making blunders in unrelated aspects and asking foolish inquiries. All of this reasoning serves to make the other person conceited when someone relaxes because they think you're less competent, less vigilant, and less dangerous. Display and give up. This is the time when control shifts hands while seeming ignorance, but when done purposefully, it changes every dialogue into a minefield where the bombs are hidden and only you know where they are. Strategies are mental disciplines that are necessary. They are not prefabricated formulas. They require self-control, patience, and mastery over one's own ego. Give up the need for immediate approbation in favor of an unnoticeable but powerful effect. Because you gain power in silence while everyone else cries for attention, but what good is mastering these weapons? True power is not just in technique if you don't know where to employ it, but in the use of surgery in particular settings at work, in relationships, and negotiations, including family dynamics. Every region has its own psychological arrangement, and that's where strategy becomes actual victory. In the following section, We will examine how to use these ideas in the most delicate and risky areas of contemporary life and triumph in every conflict without anyone noticing. My ebooks will be of great use to you if what you're hearing speaks to you. Beyond the Shadow dissects Jung's core concepts, while Dialogues with the Unconscious provides a 30-day guide to both are linked in the pinned comment. Use them in your life. Theory knowledge is only half the picture. The other half is silent mastery, putting these ideas into practice in the most challenging situations of daily life. When power is distributed under the pretext of convenience or hierarchy affection, the technique of being weak here turns into a weapon of freedom, elevation, and survival. Every word you use, every movement you refrain from choosing to fight all of these battles in silence, creates a sphere of impact that others are unaware of. Therefore, let's begin with the corporate realm, where the power struggle is played every day while wearing false grins and professional masks, and in being discreet is undervalued in a setting where conceit and flattery are frequently mistaken for expertise. Tactical edge when interacting with problematic co-workers, such as the traditional direct confrontation, the emotional reaction, and the explosion, are mistakes. But the real strategist records observations, gathers trends, and keeps a friendly tone while creating a dossier internally. And when the time comes, an internal complaint, reorganization, and a chance to reveal the pattern of abuse and attack is exact, deadly, and undefended since other people were occupied. Working in the shadows with cruel supervisors while vying for recognition, here your method becomes much more delicate as your smoke shield appears to be obedient. When a high-ranking manipulator feels they have total control over their subordinates, they flourish, but the silent preparation with updated resumes triggered is concealed by an apparent submission. Networks' evacuation plans are prepared, and you depart the battlefield at that precise moment. They think they have triumphed, and then they lose everything at once. Regulate morale and frequently their own standing in social interactions. With a spectacular example, the field becomes even more delicate and perilous. Inclination to react with irony, contempt, and attempts to demonstrate emotion superiority, but this just reinforces the cycle. Genuine control is found in being neutrally friendly. Become uninteresting and bland, not because they are weak, but because they are intelligent. When the other person doesn't respond, they emotionally collapse and deconstruct your inaction. Turns into the most potent form of agony. When family members are manipulative, the conflict is prolonged and hushed, and the secret is superficial agreement, such as nodding, smiling, and saying yes, yet on the inside you have they believe. They still have control, even if they are unaware that your life has already been decided to follow a blueprint over you. But the only illusion they have is one that is maintained by your ability to keep the theater in good condition. And the more they think that the more they deviate from the truth, the more they affect you. And what about relationships that are poisonous are those in which the other person expects you to always be accessible, always produce, and always fulfill the role they imposed on you. In this situation is the most effective weapon. There are no conflicts or statements, just an increasing quiet. You stop responding so fast and stop defending yourself when you take a deliberate break. And you gradually fade away from their daily routine. And when they notice it, it will rebuilding. The bridge in personal life through strategic invisibility may be too late. Appears in the ability to master reaction criticism, then grin and accept it. Consider internally, not because the viewpoint of the other person is more important than your own, but because you recognize that responding only results in losing battles and giving up on pointless struggles to win significant conflicts. The real strength is in deciding which conflicts to fight, and negotiations begin modestly, giving the other party the impression that they are in the stronger position. Be adaptable, even if you're insecure, and ultimately guide things to where you've established from the start in each of these situations the core of being able to manipulate both your surroundings and yourself to make yourself seem weak so that the world perceives you as strong as what makes you invincible. Overlooks you and be powerful enough to defeat it with a single blow at that precise moment. Motion, but there is still a question. Why is this tactic so successful? The answer is far away, and nature seems to favor the quiet, patient, and subtle. Beyond human psychology, it can be found in the natural cycles of predatory animal actions according to the laws of silent survival. Then we will examine the ancestral capability of invisibility and how nature shaped this in the following section. Strategy and the similarities between the most deadly strategists in society and the world's top predators. The lion does not roar before attacking.